Good morning. We look today at Psalm 68 and Psalm 69. And these are both fairly lengthy psalms. Psalm 68 is attributed to David, and some people feel that rather than one psalm, it was probably some fragments that were put together. It doesn't have a real smooth flow to it in some ways. But it's a psalm of praise and of thanksgiving. It starts out, "Let God rise up, let his enemies be scattered." And then I like the line, "As wax melts before the fire, let the wicked perish before God." And you think about that, like a candle or something that is, burning, the wax just melts down. Or if you have a big fire burning and you hold the wax over it, it'll just kind of melt and drip and it's gone. And the wax itself burns up and is gone in smoke. And this is what the psalmist is saying, let my enemies be like that, like the wax that is melted and gone, or like the smoke that is driven away. And we've all seen, like when the sloughs are burning the cattails and stuff, and the different fires, the smoke goes up in the air, or even from our chimneys in the wintertime, or different things in the air. It comes up, but the wind blows it away, and soon it's gone. And this is the psalmist's prayer, that God's enemies would be that way. Think about, wouldn't that be great if the devil was just gone that way, just like smoke that was drifted away and gone completely from our lives? Sin and all that, and it would be so great. And he ends this first, as the first paragraph in my Bible anyway, it's 3 verses, "But let the righteous be joyful, let them exult before God." And when our temptations, when our enemies, when those that seem to be against us are no longer present in our lives, or we decide that, I don't need to focus on that anymore, that's behind me, it's done, it's gone. When we can let go of something, it makes everything so much nicer. And then again, sing praises to God. And in verse 5 is Father of the orphans and protector of the widows. And this was one of the things that that God instructed the people, the Israelites, to watch out for, to care for the orphans. And when a woman becomes a widow, to make sure that she's provided for. And we remember it's there are different times in the Bible that the widows and the orphans weren't taken care of. And we can read that is one of the sins against Sodom and Gomorrah, was that they did not take care of the widows and the orphans. And the people, in less than ideal situations. And it's not only widows and orphans, but there are so many that need that little bit of extra help, that little bit of encouragement that way. And this is, so the psalmist is saying that God is always watching out for them, and also that we should be as well. God gives the desolate a home to live in. And you think about, and we read about the homeless in so many different cities, and here in North Dakota, we think we're kind of immune from that. But I remember when I did my CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, up in Grand Forks, that there was a man that came into the hospital in the middle of the wintertime that, his feet were severely impacted with frostbite because he'd slept in the culvert. This is where he was living, and we kind of forget that there are so many people less fortunate than we are. And then again, too, we know that there are some that are taking advantage, but there are definitely people in our area that, it says that God gives the desolate a home. People need a place to sleep, a place to be, and there's a mission in many different communities, a homeless shelter, different places that these people can come when they need that help. And it's one of the things that we as many churches help and provide, for for that type of ministry, because this is one of the things that God encourages us to do, to watch out for the others. When we get to verse 11, this is singing of a great victory. You know, the great is the company of those who bore tidings, the king of the armies they flee, the women at home divide the spoil. You know, there's been a victory in battle, and the spoils of war have been brought home and distributed amongst the families. And so it's a praising for a great victory that, you know, that God led them. And we read in the Bible, and we will continue to read in the Bible of times when God leads his people to great victories that way. Verse 19 of Psalm 68, blessed be the Lord who daily bears us up. God is our salvation. Another wonderful statement of faith that we have coming from the psalm. And then we turn to verse 21, God will shatter the heads of the enemies, the hairy crown of those who walk in their guilty ways. You know, so the psalmist is assured that you know that God will wreak vengeance upon those who are enemies. This psalm, verse 38, he gives power and strength to his people. And when I think about that, you know, I don't think of myself as overly strong or having maybe a lot of influence in a lot of different things that way, but we have power and strength to go on through the day because we know of God's love and God's grace. He gives power and strength to his people. Verse 60, Psalm 69 says, save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. And it made me think of quicksand. And I remember, you know, as a young boy growing up watching, you know, different cartoons and things when someone would get into quicksand and they're sinking and they're sinking and all of a sudden they're gone. And I remember thinking, boy, it was really good when they said, you know, when I heard in one of them that, you know, if you're in quicksand, kind of swim through it and you'll get out. And I always figured, boy, that's going to be great to know when I get into quicksand, because I was just assured that there was quicksand all over the place, and it was something that would happen, you know. And but up to your necks in water, up to your neck in trouble, you know. And I sink in deep mire where there is no foothold. And again, that's the image of quicksand, where, you know, the more you struggle, the more entrapped you are, and it, you know, there just doesn't seem to be any hope. There's no foothold. There's nothing there for you. And it's, you know, like for a person that doesn't like water or can't swim, all of a sudden, you know, if they're take a step, they're out in you know, there are places in our lakes and stuff that you can be walking along, and all of a sudden you hit a drop off, and there is no footing before you, and the sheer panic that comes. And I understand that, and so this is life. I mean, we get mired down in so many things in life. We get worried and involved or engrossed in some things sometimes that we just don't seem to have. There just doesn't seem to be a good end in sight. You know, and we feel overwhelmed, and when we finally do come to the end of it, it's such a relief, you know. And so this is where I think the psalmist is here now. You know, he's praying again for, you know, he's got these enemies. And verse 4, I had to kind of chuckle when I read this. It says, more in number than the hairs of my head are those who hate me without cause. Well, I'm getting a little thinner on top, so I must be having fewer enemies. You know, it must be disappearing somehow. But yet, even though I don't have as many hairs on my head as I used to, or as many as some people do, I'd hate to try to count all my hairs, and I'd hate to try to sit still so somebody else could count it. How could they do that other than to pluck them out one by one? You know, ooh. And again, so it's one of those things. I mean, don't bother counting, don't bother keeping track, because there are people out there that it seems, you know, they destroy me, they falsely accuse me. And then he says, what I did not steal, I must now restore. I mean, this is a false accusation, and David is saying, I didn't do anything wrong, but they want me to pay them for it. They want me to make up for it, and you know, so why must I do this? You know, it's that cry, and he says, God, you know my folly. You know the wrongs I have done are not hidden from you. I mean, we can't hide anything from God. And those people that falsely accuse us, that are working against us, God knows what's going on. And then verses 6 through 8, like verse 8 especially, I've become a stranger to my kindred, an alien to my mother's children. My brothers and sisters don't know me anymore. And you've been gone a long time. You've been hiding out. You've been changed, or they don't know who you are anymore. You mean, we do. We grow and we change, and just because maybe somebody had a rough growing up or went through a rough spot in life, we can't brand them with that image forever, because people grow up, people change, and we need to embrace that and encourage that, you know. But here he's saying that, you know, my family no longer knows me. My family no longer recognizes me. And I think about Joseph, you know, and his coat of many colors, how he had been sold into slavery and had been raised then in Egypt, and his brothers came and they didn't recognize him. Of course, they weren't looking for him either. I've been a stranger, become a stranger to my kindred. Verse 13, he's praying for this deliverance from enemies. And I love this line, at an acceptable time, O God, in the abundance of your steadfast love, answer me. At an acceptable time. Not, God, I need it right now. I mean, this is the way we feel. We'd like it right now, but at an acceptable time. To know that, you know, it's not always immediate, and we feel such a need for immediate satisfaction and immediate gratification in our lives today. But we need to have that patience to know that God works in His time. And may you trust and believe that God does work in your lives each and every day.